My name's Teori. I'm from Preserving for the Future. I'm a taxidermist, essentially. Preserving for the Future, it's the whole snowball of things. So originally it was just mainly for preserving animals, for workshops, for education. I also run live animal workshops or nature clubs and stuff like that for children. So I use a lot of my specimens for displaying to the public, and also just for public awareness around that these animals are actually getting injured for whatever reason. Yeah. And when they see their work that they've actually created, I think that's really nice, because it just shows that it's not out of reach sort of hobby to get into. I run workshops called Nature Club, where we learn about live Australian native animals. So I have a whole zoo at home where I will bring an animal in each week, and the children or adults or the public will learn about those animals, and then we'll do art or something like that around what we've learned that day. My live animal collection at home that I use for displays would consist of probably about 10 snakes, a turtle, a nice flat-shelled turtle, 6 frogs, and a whole bunch of stick insects. So I've got quite a few different species of stick insects, all Australian native, mainly from the East Coast. I've got a king skink as well, so he's a nice big local skink that you can find around wetlands, and yeah, he's one of my babies as well, I guess, yeah. I was a wildlife rehabilitator originally. I wanted to change it up a little bit, do something a little bit different. So I called around to find out if there were perhaps any taxidermists, because I thought that might have been an avenue that would be quite a bit of interest for me. I was lucky enough to get a hold of Kirsten Tallis from the museum. And because I was still working at Wildlife Centre, I was able to get the bodies and things like that and work that way. So I worked with Kirsten alongside her for a couple of years. It was really fun, you know, because that was within the museum. So, you know, we'd be doing moulds of dinosaur teeth and stuff like that. So I think I was very lucky. I've always wanted to work with wildlife, so working in a wildlife sanctuary or sick and injured wildlife, that's sort of where it triggered it. I realised there's so much waste, so a lot of the bodies just go to landfill and stuff like that, or incinerated. So I realised there was a lot of waste, and it would be good to use those animals, or at least learn for myself, learn taxidermy with those animals. So that's sort of how it started, I guess, really. I didn't think I would stay on this far, I guess, or build it up this big, but yeah, it snowballed into something that I didn't really expect, but I'm enjoying it, yeah. People react when I tell them that I'm a taxidermist. They're usually shocked at the start, and then full-on questions, you know, asking how I get the animals, why do I even do this? So it all falls, and it's more of a natural thing as well, I guess, that I like to tell people. Like, people think it's quite disgusting, but it's not, it's a natural process. So if you're cutting meat up for yourself for cooking your dinner, I think it's so not far from that, really, when you're actually working on these animals, yeah. Because I'm working with, a lot of deaf, I feel like I have to go straight to the education part, or to the reasons why this animal has come into this situation. So I think that's where I like to sort of explain it to people, or at least show some processes. So I do have animals that, let's say this guy got caught on some twine and had a compound fracture on his leg, so I've still left the twine there. So I think that's quite interesting to show people that it can be as simple as that, to how an animal can be injured just from, it's essentially all human related situations generally that I've found when I get a lot of my animals from Wildlife Centre. So I find it could have been prevented generally. So that's what I like to push and sort of tell people when I do have my animals on display. So everything, I can tell you a basic story of how I got it and how it died and things like that, and what location it came from. So I like that. I get all my specimens from different people, really. So as soon as you mention that you do anything in this sort of field, people will start bringing you animals as well. I get a lot of my specimens from that I display under myself. I get through wildlife centres. So these animals have died from situations that they were not able to be rehabilitated from. So they can come in pretty bad condition as well sometimes, which I also don't mind, because it's good to taxidermy things in the condition that they came for education, I guess. Because I've got reptiles, I have a lot of connections in the reptile sort of breeding world in Perth, so I get a lot of different animals through breeders and things like that. I sometimes will find animals. I usually go bone collecting if I want to make bone jewelry and stuff like that, so that's always a good one. So everything has to come either found from natural deaths or roadkill and things like that. And that's where I mainly get my animals from, really. A lot of my stock that I make, or the pieces that I create, the vibe for it is generally wonder carmen. So back in early 1600s, wonder carmen were types of specimens and things like that that a lot of people would collect. That's what I try to sort of, relate my work to now, is sort of a wonder carmen items. And also I really like using a lot of gems and stuff like that, or pearls for when I'm decorating pigeons and stuff. I've done a few visual art pieces where, you've got like jewels and pearls like coming out of the cavity of the body. So I think that's kind of cool as well. It makes it more pretty, I guess. A lot of people do have an attitude where taxidermy is quite a dark thing. So I think doing things like that is it lightens the mood or puts another curiosity to it, I guess, yeah. So with my taxidermy, I do the binding method. So I use plumber's hemp, which is like a fibrous substance. You can just bind that to the shape of the real body, and then that's what you would insert underneath the skin. So there's different options. Some people will take a cast of the real body, and then they will fill it with polyurethane, and then take a mold essentially of the real body, and then they can insert it in. But the method that I use is quite practical. I don't need too many supplies, so I find that, it really works for me. But I would say if you're just starting out, definitely read whatever you can and practice on whatever you can as well. And don't be too hung up if it doesn't turn out to how you would have hoped it to, because you've always got a second chance. You've always got chances, yeah. I've done a little chicken in a dome with some nice insect wings, which were quite nice. The insect wings, I breed stick insects, so once they die, I usually keep their bodies and utilize them for my own work, or use them for workshops and things like that. So that was nice. She had a mixture of wings. And also, I like doing wet specimens as well. Wet specimens are easy. If you've got a lot of animals and you need to preserve them, wet specimens are probably the one for you. And they look kind of cool. They add another depth to it, I guess. So a lot of the wet specimens I use for myself, for displaying or educating. I also like to do work on animals where they still have essentially the evidence of what killed them. And then I've got animals, so natural displays as well. So the swamp hen with her baby as well. So that's also a good one for a natural display. It's a little bit hard working in Perth or doing this business within Perth, because there's not really many people to learn from, or a lot of people don't really like to share their knowledge or their process with some of their animals. So sometimes it's quite hard to get different handy hints or find out what works. So I think everyone's quite sheltered essentially. And obviously with the rules and regulations around working on wildlife, that can also be an issue with something. So everything has to come off a display license, or you have to have written permission from DPAW on an individual cases per animal, so yeah. What keeps me in Perth is I've got too many live animals that I just I can't leave behind. And if I was to leave Perth with my animals. So I've got snakes and things like that. I can't come back into Perth. So it would be, if I was to leave, that would be it, essentially, if I was to take my animals. So that's, yeah, I've got my baggage. But if I was to leave, I would love to travel, go to America, or even New Zealand, and work alongside them, I guess, because there's a lot of taxidermy. It's quite big over in New Zealand and America and things like that. So yeah, it'd be good to broaden my skills, or even just travel in general, I think. But I'm gonna have to wait a bit.